Hi, I'm Tim. I am the Tinkering Turtle. Today we're going to talk about a little bit of a problem. Every e-bike owner's worst fear is that they're going to have a problem with their e-bike and it's going to be something that's going to take a while to fix or be a problem. I ran into this. I've had this bike for about a year. It was given to me. It was one of the first Magicycles off the production line, and I just recently switched it over to be my daily rider. And I was out the other day. I stopped at a stop sign and went to accelerate with the throttle to get the bike moving as I started to pedal, and I heard a sound, and I'll show you what that is. Now, unfortunately, the video clip I had of the sound in the motor, I lost it or something, so I don't know what happened to it. But what the sound was, is it sounded like the sound was coming from the motor, and it sounded like the planetary gears were slipping in there on the teeth, and it was kind of, that was the sound. It sounded like the planetary gears, so that's what I assumed it was. Now that I've got the response and what to check from Magicycle, I'm not so sure that that was the case, and we'll talk about that a little bit here later in the video. Now, once I've heard this sound, the first thought I have is there's a problem inside the motor with the planetary gears or something like that. But I decided, even though this was given to me and I probably didn't have a great warranty on it because it was given to the channel, I decided to reach out to Magicycle to see if they wanted to be part of diagnosing and fixing the problem. They got back to me within a day, really quickly, with an email and said, hey, check these connections, which is what I'm going to do first. Then I'm going to respond back to them and tell them what I found, and then we'll go from there. And as this video progresses, because I haven't done any of the work yet, then you'll see the process to get through to the finish of diagnosing and eventually fixing whatever's wrong with the bike. The thing I want to point out here is that a lot of people get freaked out about having an electrical component go bad or something go wrong with the bike. The interesting part about that is they have this irrational fear that it won't be fixed or it won't be fixable. If the bike can be built, it can be fixed. I can replace motors, I can replace controllers, I can swap out batteries. There's a lot of different options for fixing the bike. If you buy a regular bike, you're going to have to deal with brakes just like you are on an e-bike. You're going to have to deal with broken components just like you are with an e-bike. With an e-bike, those components might be a little bit more expensive, but if you're under warranty, it's really not that big a deal. You just reach out and work through the steps for support to get to a resolution. It's just that simple. So I'm not going to freak out. This is a really wonderful bike. I'm excited to get it back on the road after we diagnose and fix the problem. And the process of fixing it should be illuminating for you, my subscribers. Anyway, let's get to it. So the email I received back from Magicycle said that the most common cause for that issue wasn't the planetary gear in the motor, but it was actually the connectors here at the frame and the 10 core pin that comes out of the controller and is back up in the frame. Those two connectors, if they're not properly seated, can cause that intermittent pulse and make that sound for the that sounds like there's a problem with the motor. So I'm going to go through the process of the email. I'm going to show you what that is and see if we can just disconnect and reconnect both of those connectors and see if the problem goes away. So I'm going to start by clipping off the wire tie. Careful not to clip into the motor wire, but I'm clicking off the wire tie that holds the motor connector to the frame, and I'm going to pull it straight apart and then visually look at all the pins and make sure none of them are burnt, there's no problems, everything looks good, so I think that's good. So on the connectors, you not need to push them straight back together, but you need to line up. This one has flats on the connectors, you line those up and you push it straight back together until it's completely seated. Now this one's checked. The other one to check is under here. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get to it without removing the guard, but it's a 10 core wire that I need to pull out and disconnect and reconnect. Let me see if I can figure out which one it is. So to get at these, I'm going to have to move the skid plate that I installed. So I'll take off a couple more ties. Get to that one. I don't have to remove it completely, just be able to bend it out of the way. And I'm going to have to work these lines out to get to the connector. There we go, that's the 10-pin connector there. And I'm going to repeat the process here. I'm going to pull it apart. Oh, God. Once you have it pulled apart, you may need a light to look down in there, make sure everything looks good, which it does. Then there are arrows on the connectors on both sides. You want to line those up. Once they're lined up, just push them all the way together, make sure they're all the way together. And then you can feed that line back up into the frame. Now once you've completed disconnecting and reconnecting those two, you should turn on the bike and do a basic test to make sure everything's working. The bike powers up without any issue. Take a quick ride. The motor powers up, so I'm going to take a quick ride and just make sure everything's good. So I just took it for a quick ride. The issue I was having with the motor doesn't seem to be there, so I'm going to let Magicycle know that that seems to have fixed it. And if it reappears later, then I will readdress it. Now the only thing left to do before I button up this issue is I'm going to go get some black zip ties and I'm going to re-zip tie all the stuff that I unzip tied when I was pulling those two connectors apart and reconnecting them, just to make sure everything is buttoned back up into place. It is fall here in Michigan. The weather's quickly turning to the point where we're not going to be riding a whole bunch more because it gets cold, and when you're going 15-20 miles an hour, that's really cold on your face and hands. So it's likely that while I will ride this bike a little bit more, up probably until November, I'm probably going to also get it ready for storage. Now one thing I do for storage is I take the battery and I get it down to 75% charge. I'll pull it off and I'll store that inside in a warm place, not hot, but just room temperature. And then I'll probably put this bike down in the shed and lock it up for the winter. Appreciate you watching. If you got to the end, that's great. And I will catch you next time. There, all the zip ties have been replaced. All the wires are bundled back together. The issue seems to be resolved, so I'm going to go out and give it some rides over the next week or two and make sure that it doesn't reoccur. Thanks for watching.